Good morning, everybody. Am I clearly audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay, thank you. So, good morning, everyone. I welcome you all to the fourth day of this Atal Academy sponsored 5 days online FDP on emerging financial management and accounting techniques organized by Department of Business Administration, the University of Burdwan. In this morning session, today we have with us Professor Abhijit Dotto from Sikkim University, a central university of this country. Presently, Professor Dotto is a professor in the Department of Commerce and is also the Dean School of Professional Studies, Sikkim University, Gangtok. Prior to his present affiliation with Sikkim Central University, he was affiliated with ICFI Business School, KSOM, Amity University, Heritage Business School, IIS WBM Kolkata, EIILM Kolkata, and Institute of Public Enterprises, Hyderabad. Professor Abhijit Dotto did his graduation and post-graduation studies as well as his PhD from Utkal University, Odisha. Thereafter, he did his PGDBA from Symbiosis Pune and a DLIT from Sambalpur University. Professor Dotto has a vast teaching experience spanning 26 years in commerce and management. He is a prolific researcher with many publications in various journals, edited books, conference proceedings, as well as a patent to his credit. He has authored 9 books in various disciplines of management studies. In addition to he also shoulders various other academic responsibilities, such as he is a NAC assessor, advisor to finance commissions, to state a few. Now, with these few words, I present before you all Professor Abhijit Dotto from Sikkim Central University. Professor Dotto, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. For a while, just that my camera should be on, then I'll switch it off. Thank you, Dr. Abhik, for making such a beautiful introduction. Can the slides be shared?
Sir, I guess you can also share it.
I can also share it.
One meeting host.
That would be wonderful. That would be much better.
Just
then
check.
let me do
Otherwise,
that.
we have it at our end.
No, I'll do it from my side.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir, it is getting presented.
Yes. So should I start the presentation?
Sir, you can, because you have a meeting, you told us. So
yes,
you can start.
That's true.
I have informed the participants and they have also started to join.
Yes. So I'm not making it full screen. And this entire presentation is based on a premise and a disclaimer that the area of behavioral finance is a very large area. And it has been started to be explored very recently, though there are traces of behavioral financial research as early as 1952. However, technically, if you say the behavioral finance has started off late, I will keep my discussion to that premise when it has started its momentum. The idea behind this presentation is basically to elicit interest in this area of research. There is no solid premise that this is behavioral finance and that is not behavioral finance. This is an emerging area. Subsequently, it will take about 50-60 years to become very concrete definition. This is still very fluid and this is being researched across the globe. I'm sure these discussions that we have today will at least motivate some people to take up research in this area. So I start my presentation. The beginning. The word behavioral finance started to make its round in India, especially in the academic circle during the earlier part of 1980s. And just a minute. in the early parts of 1990s, the idea were loosely held, and at the beginning was largely capital market research pertaining to efficient market hypothesis. This area, EMH, is very well known to all of us. And those who do investment management, study investment management, teach investment management, do research in investment management are very aware of EMH. By the year 2002, this is the R-marked year, a Nobel Prize in Economics to Daniel Kahneman and Vernon Smith in experimental economics and psychology for decision making created waves about the acceptance of behavioral finance as well as grounded a new discipline of finance and economics. Kahneman and Vernon Smith, what they did was that they created a laboratory to make experimentation of micro level behavioral decision and capture information about how people react. Several experimentation and several ideas were generated out of their experimentation, and they use the tools and techniques of psychology and the domain of economics to capture this experimental results. As a result, this was called as experimental economics, and this received wide amount of acceptance in the academic circle because they could actually dwell upon and came to conclusion on certain basic things which were unanswered for quite some time. Say, for example, one area in which they had thrown light during their research was what is known as an winner's trap. Winner's trap or winner's curse, as it is called, is basically a phenomena. When you start winning a gamble, you get intoxicated with the win, and then subsequently what happens is that you keep on betting, and at some point of time you start losing, and then the losses are phenomenally larger than the number of wins. Why did you not quit the market or the gamble when you had actually won, and why did one step into the area of rebetting is a question, and that technically, quote unquote, is known as winner's curse. So they could experimentally find out the reasons for winner's curse, and that had opened up research areas and policy making decisions like anchor investors and things like that in the financial world. And today, that is one of the widest used behavior which in finance which is being studied. They also studied heuristic. Heuristic has a very wide definition, but just to make it simple, heuristic basically means an level of decision which an individual takes at a spurt of the movement. And this is very human approach. Anytime one has some money in the pocket, one goes to the market to buy something planned in the mind, but then many a times we all end up buying something else. And we also cannot explain ourselves why did we buy the thing which we did not actually had any plan to buy, and why did we not buy the things which were already planned. This is a very, very common heuristic problem. And this kind of behavior does affect the financial decision-making process. So Kahneman and Smith actually brought in, there was another name which I should tell is about Tversky. Kahneman and Tversky is the largest pairing researcher in this area. And they had brought in large amount of informational change in the way, not only they actually experimented, they also made mathematical formulation to bring together this knowledge, which we will loosely dwell upon. So I will now go on to the definition. I have picked up two very important definitions which actually defines the decision-making process of investors. The first one is Pruden. In 1995, he makes a comprehensive statement. He says that behavioral finance is a science that strives to give explanation and improve into the overall judgment process of investors. So the definition itself says that it basically throws and gets into the area of understanding how an individual reacts and behaves. And in the process, those who do research, they help the policymaker and the academia in understanding how the overall judgment process individually and group wise will affect the investment. Riccardi and Simon, 2000, defined the field in the following words. Behavioral finance attempts to explain and increase understanding of reasoning patterns of investors, including the emotional process involved and the degree to which they influence the decision-making process. Now, this definition is very micro definition, which basically tries to analyze Riccardi and Simon's study. If you follow later, maybe you will find that they had done micro analysis of market, and they have also developed micro understanding as to why the individual uh, investors behave in a certain way while they are operating in the market. And let me also tell you that behavioral finance is not about investing in stocks, bonds, and infrastructures or real estate. It culminates to as small things as and buying and spending and saving habit. All of them comes under behavioral finance. Largely, behavioral finance has been influenced by two major areas of social science. One is psychology, which is the predominant one, and sociology, because sociology has also a large amount of collective psychology. Both these areas have been particularly important in influencing behavioral finance. And to be very categorical, they have influenced in various ways. Each of the researcher probably has taken up behavioral finance in various ways. So now we'll get into knowing what are the known premise and unknown premise of behavioral finance. For simplicity's sake, I have divided this entire discussion into two parts. Efficient market hypothesis, which is I have named this as known premise because this is something which we all know and we have been working on right from maybe postgraduate level, where we had done project works or small research articles. There are many of us who could have done basic research on efficient market hypothesis, and some of them could have done very advanced level of EMH premise work. So this is very known, and as you know, EMH, the market hypothesis are pretty old actually. It is as old probably as scientific inquiry of the investment behavior, and several people have actually contributed to this area. The unknown premise, why I have told, is the bias. What is a bias? A bias is a state of mind which actually believes in certain predetermined knowledge and acts on it. These biases may be thumb rules, they may be earlier learning experience known as cognitions, and they can also be group behaviors such as one which motivates you to appreciate the behavior of the others around you. Now, these biases are inherent to any animal, not about human beings. These biases are what we know as, there are reflex biases, what is known as it happens because you are arranged in a certain way in the mind, and there are cognitive biases which are learned biases. So you have reflective biases and cognitive biases. Reflective bias are their biases which, for giving you an example, when you are going to your office, You know the things that are to be picked up before going to the office. You put the pen in your pocket, you put the spectacle in your eyes, you take your mobile phone and keep it in your bag or pocket, you wear your shoes. These are reflex. You don't have to be told which one to be done before what. So you are doing reflex wise. Whereas there is certain thing called cognitive behavior. What is a cognitive behavior? We learn them. Say for example, uh, all of us know that we should not touch an open flame. We might get burned. How did you know that? This might have happened by two ways, that somebody must have taught you, or you could have experienced a burn by touching the flame. So you have learned actually this behavior. Similarly, in finance also, we have some learned behavior. Sometimes the behavior is learned through, uh, hardship. Sometimes it is learned by others and passed on to you. That is called group behavior. Somebody had failed in business in the family, so there is a stigma that nobody should take up business because somebody up the line in your family had failed. And the advice that goes around in this world is that don't do business, take up a job, because business is uncertain and you might actually lose money. These are biases. These are cognitive biases, and these cognitive biases may be very individual or maybe group. In fact, in financial world also, finance is not something which is away from human behavior, because these are decision taking processes. Many such things are actually incorporated. We will talk about few which I have identified. There are actually 27 known biases which has been researched. I have picked up 7 and 8, and I thought I will talk on them for about 2-3 minutes each, so that I can actually uh, you know adjust things. Had there been no predisposed uh, lineup functions for me, or had I had some more time, I could have, of course, elaborated on many of these things. However, I have not researched on most of those areas. I will tell you which are the areas which I have done research and where I have competence in research. So again, coming back to bias, there, as I told you, there are collective or group behaviors and there are individual behaviors. Both these collective behaviors and individual behaviors can be studied under the premise of behavioral finance. Of course, efficient market hypothesis is something which we are also including in our behavioral finance. To start with, researching EMH, because EMH is the precursor or the first level research that we have in behavioral finance. And in this area, we have, we have these theories which are very well known. EMH research largely had constituted in 3 areas: random walk, and then we have this field forms borrowed from physics, largely particle physics, the strong, semi-strong, and weak form. The random walk actually shows the efficiency. That means no information can influence the behavior of the price, and they are random. So therefore, any number of process to manipulate the market prices of stocks is not possible because it is a random walk. The other field forms are strong, semi-strong, and weak form, depending upon the amount of information absorbed in the price in order to manipulate the price by the various players in the market. This has led to an financial observation which is known as asymmetric information process. Asymmetry means these are not symmetrical. The information, they're at the two end of a theoretical distribution. If you look at it mathematically, there will be two groups negotiating, and one will try to pull it to the left, another will try to pull it information to the right. And depending upon who has more information, they'll be able to influence the price, and the price patterns will be kinked, skewed towards the one with more information. Now, this theories have all been statistically tested. A random walk, there is, I don't know how many of you actually practice econometrics or you actually do econometrics. If you are used to econometrics, then there is something called unit root testing. Now, unit root testing is the method whereby we see whether a data is random or non-random. And this is basically a stationarity check. So there are several checks in this Box-Jenkins method, Q statistics, unit root statistics. The hypothesis in unit root testing is that the data is not stationary. That is the null hypothesis. And then there are methods to see that the data is stationary or non-stationary. In fact, Green, who had been one of the major economics profounder of econometrics, has given clue as to how the random walk hypothesis can be tested by using the Box-Jenkins statistics. And this is very well founded. In fact, I too have a research paper in that area to understand whether the market is random in India or not random in India. If you have an inclination to econometrics and you know econometric tools, you can use the random walk hypothesis, test the random walk hypothesis to Box-Jenkins Q statistics. And these are available on freely available software like R or paid software like eViews. You can do this statistics, but you require a little bit of theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge to run the statistical tools. Then come field form theories, strong, semi-strong, and weak form. All these three methods or EMHs that we are talking about are generally studied through something called market anomaly. And what are market anomalies? Market anomaly, the word anomaly itself basically means that there is a discrepancy between what is seen and what is actually happening. So what you observe is what is not actually happening, and what is actually happening is not observable. So there are many market anomalies which are basically nowadays looked into, and there had been a large number of studies which are there. The area touched upon generally are structural functions such as unfair competitions, lack of market transparency, regulatory actions, etc. You can there are many studies which actually have this connects unfair competition, lack of market transparency, and regulatory actions. These are structural functions, all as microstructures of the market. The most commonly researched area is the calendar effect, such as the January effect. Now, what is the January effect? January effect is an European phenomena. We know that the European community has a December-January festive bias or a festive season. December is Christmas, followed by January, the first month, which is known as New Year celebration. We also do that. Now, what happens in many European countries is that people take loan during the festive season. They are paid a bonus by their employees at the festive season, and they also save a lot of money to be spent at the year end. Now, after the year end is over, if all the money is exhausted, fair enough, we don't have anything to tell. But if some money is left or some amount of money is left, it will get channelized into saving and investment. In that case, January should show a boom in investment or funds flowing into investment channels. Now, therefore, one of these should be stock market, and therefore the price reactions of the stock market should be upward. If more money flows in, as you know, the demand will increase and the prices will flow up. And therefore, it is believed that in January, the price rally will be bullish. And as the market slumps down, the time when the this money stops flowing into the market, there will be fall in the prices of the market. This is predominantly called as January market. Following this, there are other calendar effects, such as the day of the week. It is generally believed that Friday, the last trading price of any stock, is actually kept in the memory on the Monday. So if the price memory or last price memory of a stock traded on Friday is high, then the opening impact of that stock on Monday will also be high. Similarly, if the price memory developed by a stock on Friday is low, the market price on Monday will also be low. These are something which are observable. And as the week goes by, generally by Wednesday and Thursday, the prices either will keep up the rally or will be pulled down to lower standards. Depending upon this, you can invest, enter the market, or you can sell, exit the market on the patterns of the calendar effects, January effect and the day of the week effect. It is also believed that when there is an initial public offer, then because initial public offers are always placed at a discount from the market price to attract more investors. So the people who are interested in an IPO would actually wait for the discount and enter the market, and they will start with selling their stocks in regular interval to get capital gains. Now there is a pattern of doing that: first week, second week, third week, fourth week, then 6 months and 1 year. And this actually follows the fallacy that I talked about, gambler's fallacy, but in a different context. Then this patterns of prices which flows can be actually observed through the patterns of the price movement. These are very important for regulator because for stabilizing the market prices, we use such information to stabilize the market prices. The third area which is often done in market anomalies are effect caused by economic agents such as bull rally, bear rally, and anchor investor. Bull rally is the rally at which the prices move up and are generally fueled by bulls. Bear rally is a rally in which the price is pushed down and generally fueled by the bears. And anchor investors are the stabilizing investors who have to pitch in, especially in case of the newly issued stocks, if the prices become destabilized. And this is an arrangement between the company which is floating the stock and the investors who are known as anchor investors. Anchor, like we have an anchor in ship, it basically helps the ship to stay put in one place. These anchor investors also help the stock prices to be stable and put in one place in place of uncertainty. You might have also heard about something called a green shoe option. Green shoe options are also an extension of anchors, and they are also available for you to understand and efficiently manage the market. These areas are also studied under market anomalies. So there's a large area of market anomalies which can be studied. These are only few. There are various other areas on market anomalies. For example, as I told you, microstructure analysis, like interest rate effect on stock prices, interest rate effect on the tax structures are also part of the market anomalies. In fact, in 2007, 8, 9, 10, that is the year of the slump, a great economic slump due to the subprime crisis 8 and 9, we had a we had a large amount of study on how interest rate are affecting the market structures, because at that time the prime crisis was that of financial institutions unable to hold the assets that they were having. So that microstructure studies are also part of EMH studies. So that area is still being explored. In fact, it has been seen that microstructures, though they are actually structural studies, like I told you, have no bearing on directly on finances, but they help in explanation of many factors which are there in the market. The second is the researching market bias. We will try to dwell upon this for some time. There are quite a number of research areas in market bias. As I told you, the individual bias. What is an individual bias? The individual bias is seen in each one of us, all of us who are actually uh, sane individuals and who are capable of taking decisions are the ones who will actually have such biases. This can, as I told you, can be cognitive or reflexive biases. Reflexive biases are not so much important in case of behavioral finance, because reflexes are temporal in nature, and human beings are capable to change reflex over a period of time. And you might be remembering that as a student you had certain reflex, and as a grown up you have certain other reflex. So reflexes don't stay very long with you. Reflexes keeps on changing from time to time. So reflex behaviors are not very important, but yes, the cognitive behaviors are very, very important. In fact, cognitive behaviors in group are more important than individual, but individuals has to be finally found out, because unless you find out what is the individual behavior, you will not be able to do the collective behavior. So these studies are in the line of finding individuals and retail investment behavior and responses. What is retail investor? Retail investors are people like us who invest in the market in various forms. Uh, we save in the market in various forms. Say, for example, fixed deposit, we keep money in post offices, we keep in money in mutual funds, we keep money in stock markets, in debt markets, corporate bonds. We are the retail investors, and we are the largest segment across the globe who has no connect to each other directly. No two retail investor could be directly connected, but they are able to read the signal from each other very intelligently, either through information fits or by observations. Human being is eternally intelligent, and human beings can pick up signals. In fact, all animals can pick up signals. Human beings are the superior animals, so they're intelligent, and they have very large ability to use cognitive processes transformed into real time activities. So they can pick up behaviors which are inherent inside them, even at some time genetically coded inside the structure, and also learned through a process over a period of time in their life, and they can respond to certain situation, including financial situation, in that way. This method is which is applied here for research is field-based data collection and interpretation and of description. This is the area in which I had widely worked. If you look for my work in Google Scholar and other, I have few papers in which I have worked in this. One is a retail investor's reaction to good and bad news, which is highly used by research community across the globe. And another is perspective of the investor's reaction, which is what I have actually patented in both India and US and Australia. And this is actually a tool to measure the market-wide behavior of individuals, and this is actually culminated into 5 general functions, and these 5 general functions can be actually calculated with scores, and one can tell if the score reaches this amount of level, then there is a certain behavior predominantly seen in the market. So individual biases are very, very studied area, and this basically they use they are basically field data. That means they are collected from individuals, and they use description statistics, which means mean, media, standard deviations, things like that. And with that, you can interpret a lot of things because those are the fundamental cornerstones of statistical analysis. And this research is very, very poignant. These are known as instrument or tools too. There are several other appropriate tools which are available in the market. Then I will now come to the research in bias, which is collective behavior. This is one area in which I also have wide amount of research experience. And there are 23 known behaviors, as I told you some time back. Actually, there are 27, but 23 very well defined behaviors, which are basically divided into, some of them are given market bias. What is a market bias? A market bias is basically an explanation or an exemplification of individual bias. When the individual biases get collective, then they become group bias, and this group bias are sometimes seen in the market. There are many forms of market biases, and all these market biases which can lead to EMH and which can lead to collective disfiguring of the market information can also be studied. Most of these market biases are generally studied through econometric processes. That is Bayesian economics, that Bayesian statistics has to be used, because again, let me tell you, while you do research in financial market, especially in behavioral finance, you will never get a normal distribution data. Financial data are not normally distributed, so don't worry about that. It is generally non-normal, so you cannot use any normal distribution related test, but you can as well use a distribution free test like a chi-square and witness test to understand the processes. Largely, since we use Bayesian statistics, we use chi-square as a phenomena to understand this economics. Then comes contrarian investment. Contrarian investment, as the name indicates, that some investor would invest in something which the others will not do. Why do they do? In fact, there is a group of people who invest in something which the others don't do. I'm sure you have heard of something called penny stock. A penny stock basically means very low price stocks in the market, something which has value of 1 rupee or 1 rupee 25 paisa. It has been seen that these stocks are largely ignored by people with deep pocket, and these are the ones in which people with less money gets it. But the contrarian part of it is that people who get into this have higher returns than people who actually get into the big value stock or blue chip stock. A 1 rupee 25 paisa stock, if by the end of the day becomes 2 rupee 50 paisa, you can understand that you have got almost 2.5 to 3 times more of the money that you have invested. So if you have put 1 lakh rupees, you will end up having about 3 lakh rupees at the end of the day. So people don't understand, but then there are certain groups who will basically do. In this moment, I remember the famous English author Mark Twain. Once, he was a great investor in stock market. Many of you do not know, maybe. He made a very phenomenal statement. He said, how to win in the market. He said, first locate a person who perennially loses, and then do exactly the opposite of what he does. Then you will win. It may look slightly hilarious, but it is actually very wise information, because the person who perennially loses is actually being unable to read the information of the market. Therefore, a person who is intelligent will do exactly the opposite as to what he does. These are traits of contrarian. Then there is anchoring behavior, not to be confused with anchoring investment. Anchoring behavior are not anchor investors. That is a different thing. Anchoring behaviors are behaviors which are related to certain basic learning early in your life. One learning I have always had heard in our family is that don't take credit. Live within the sources of money you have. These are so ingrained in us that we do not want to break it. You must be knowing that there was a famous atheist in ancient time called Charvak. Charvak once told that uh, take loan and have ghee, that is the best form of food. Loan and take ghee. So, Krutang, Rina, Pribang, Gita. About 3000 years back he told. Today this is so relevant for financial world. Many of us had built up houses much younger in our life because we believe that credit extension is one of the major ways to grow in life, whereas the conventional behavior that we had been always being advised is don't take loan, don't take credit, remain within the limits of your earning. These are anchoring behaviors, and these behaviors affect the financial market. Then herding behavior, this is something which I had worked quite some time. There are two types of herding behavior we do. One is called individual herding behavior, and that is called collective herding behavior, or we call institutional herding. These can also be studied through econometrics, but you require a little bit of skill. These herding behaviors are basically from panic. When people panic, they group together and they give signals in the market. They are not to be confused with market rallies. Herding is not market rally. They are very long time behavior and they slowly build up. These are actually what is known as outlier studies in econometrics, which means they are far away from the mean. They happen at the true end of the normal distribution. So that way, theoretical distribution, the end part, and you have modes of the studies are basically at the end of the distribution, that is +3 and -3 standard deviation. So there are techniques to measure behaviors. There are filters to bring out behaviors. Then there is something called information cascade. Information cascade is another area in which lot of research are being done. What is an information cascade? Cascade basically means water falling through a step. That is called a cascading. Cascade, basically the water when it falls through a step, a waterfall falls through a step, the force of the water reduces. So the first step on the top will have more force of the water than the last step. Information cascade is also like that. The first point of information is more solid than the last point of information. As the information, the generating source of information and the receiving source of information become physically distant. Okay, and this in this context, physical distance is not about geographical distance. The information biases reduce. As a result, today if I ask, do you know what is happening or what happened in New York Stock Exchange yesterday? Many of you could not be immediately able to answer, probably go through Google and try to search. This is because the information arising in US market is not very relevant at this moment immediately to me. So the cascade of that information is very small on me. Whereas if the Bombay Stock Exchange falls today morning, you will be immediately alarmed because many of your investment lineups could be directly attached to Bombay Stock Exchange. Hence, you will be kind of immediately alarmed by this information. So you see the cascade of the information is actually helping you not to be very, uh, your response to the investment reactions are based on information cascades. Then comes illusion of control. Illusion of control, actually we all have illusion of control. What is an illusion of control? It is a belief that I have a control on a person whom I believe listens to me. It may be an illusion from a teacher to student, parent to world, between two relations like husband and wife. Everybody suffers from an illusion of control. Similarly, investors extend this illusion of control into the market. It has been quite often told that mutual funds, when they enter the market, they make big rallies towards the market. Maybe it is true for a few minutes, but after that, even mutual funds cannot control the market. Even they entered with $300 million or something like that, they will not be able to control the market. This is just an illusion. It's an illusion of control, because market, if it is random and if it is robust, it will not be able to be manipulated by any form. It will get diluted by the information cascade and the illusion of control. And why do we study illusion of control? Because we have to understand certain phenomena which we are so strongly believing, anchoring behavior, that this phenomena will definitely lead to that phenomenon. Actually, it has been found that many such phenomena which we have already estimated in our mind. There's something called mental accounting, which is also not there in this, but it is one of the behavior. Mental accounting, that means you have already pre-calculated in your mind that this will lead to that. Actually, those doesn't happen. These all are person's perceptions of illusion of control and affect the financial market. Then there is something called chaos theory. This is a pure physical theory. There is a word called order out of chaos, especially in order of signals, sound signals and data processing. There seems to be an chaos, but actually when you actually look at it, there is actually an order behind it, and that order has to be found out from the chaos by iterating noise. The process of iteration is a science and it can be applied. The method that we use in this is pure mathematical science, and those who are interested can read the basic ideas of this in a book called The Shadows of the Mind. In that book, predominantly chaos theory has been discussed. And if you have a friend in physics, or one who has done physics, they are very good at understanding chaos theory, because chaos is a part of their basic training. Then comes heuristic. I have already discussed about heuristic, which is human behavior which happens because of very unknown reason as to why we react to certain things in a certain way, in a certain time, without any rationale. Our rationale actually fails in the heuristic process, and in the heuristic, many things in human life are determined by heuristic. So does the market, and so does the prices of the stocks. The next one is bubbles and crashes. Bubbles and crashes. Bubble basically means and structure which is having created from within. Any soap bubble, basically the pressure inside is higher than the pressure outside, and it crashes when the pressure outside is more than the pressure inside. It's the air pressure. So in stock market also, bubbles are created. Sometime the market goes up, and then suddenly it falls. That's called a crash. Now there are methods to do. A simple method to do is to construct a portfolio before the window of the crash and after the window of the crash, and see how they have performed using simple Sharpe technique and iterating using a discriminant analysis. You can see whether the bubbles were actually theirs and crashes were actually theirs. Did they implicate? Or you can have several portfolios created, theoretical portfolios created, and check the prices. And the last one is panic behavior. Panic and harding are actually two sides of the same coin. Unless there is a panic, there is no harding. We saw panic in Afghanistan a few days back. Panic leads to people to come together. So this is not just when Taliban's take over. It also happens when there is a bank failure. If there is we had seen that in Maharashtra, a few cooperative banks failed. When they failed, people all came on the street. We saw it when demonetization happened. All these are panic, basically panic, and panic reflects in the price because panic is an investment information which quickly the market trades, and market information is quickly read by the individual. This is just an illustrated list and not an exhaustive list. The areas of financial research in behavior is very large. Research in market bias. This tools and techniques. I have actually told three techniques. Econometric analysis. This is mostly done. Econometrics rather. Efficient frontier analysis called data envelopment analysis. There are quite a number of techniques, but Malquest index. Malquest index is one area which we are now using. I am not a proficient person in Malquest indexing. You can try it out. Data frontier analysis, data envelopment analysis are also very much used in behavioral finance. And then there is this mapping technique using inventories and instruments. This is something which I had been I have been using this technique. So I think, yes, this is one area which you can have. I'm giving you ending word that the area of behavioral finance is wide and large. It's very, very wide. Researchers can experiment with various areas depending on their interest area. To build a mental block for such new area will itself defeat the purpose of research. Do not create a barrier. Look at inquisitively towards the problems of finance. The moment we stop ourselves from doing things, we will not be able to do research in such a new upcoming area. Some areas of references which I have used Prudence definition and based on how market behaves, and Riccardi and Simon, what is behavioral finance. This works are quite well known. So I would conclude my talk. I believe I had been able to finish right in time. And I would appreciate if there are one or two questions I can take. If I can take one or two questions, I can, if it is allowed by the organizer, I'll stop presenting.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Datto, for keeping things so lucid. And I'm already getting responses from some of the participants that it has been a very effective session because you have touched upon, as you promised me, that you have touched upon the research aspect of it. Okay, we can see Dr. Reena Prasad raising her hand. Dr. Prasad, you can go ahead.
Sir, please explain how we can use mapping techniques for research.
Yes, there are various tools available for mapping behaviors. You have to get in touch with some behavioral scientist. And they have, say for example, there is something called personality factor testing. I don't know whether you have heard, there are 15 personality, 16 personality, 4 personality testing. Many of these personalities actually affect the business behaviors. You can use mapping techniques through them, and they are available techniques. You can also develop your own maps. You can also develop your own maps for the process of any kind of, but all that you require is a little bit of understanding to behavioral perspective. Thank you, madam.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any other participant? We have very many learned participants from across the country. So if any one of you have any query, because as I have already communicated to you, Dr. Dotto has a meeting from 11 a.m. That is why we pre-scheduled the session, and sir will be in a hurry. So if you have any question, please post it, or you can ask it directly. That will be the best part. You can switch on your video. Oh, there are no other questions in the chat box.
Should we stop this session a bit?
Yeah, I think so, because nobody is saying that. Sir, with your permission, what I will do, when I will share the PPT, I will share your official email ID with the participants.
Please do.
So that if they have any query later on, they can get an access to you.
Yes, very much. We should be in touch with each other to do research. That is the best thing to do. Thank you so much, all of you, for
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, from the wonderful state of Sikkim to get connected with us.
Wonderful indeed.
Yeah. Sir, a question has been asked. Can I just say? A student of our university, he has posted a question.
They're very nice.
Yeah.
There is something called, what is the difference between panic and herding? Difference, there's not much of difference. As I told you, this is two sides of the same coin. Panic leads to herding, actually. The classic example is that if there is a group of animals and if you throw a stone to one animal, they will all run in one direction. That is herding. So you saw whatever happened in Good, Bad, Ugly in Afghanistan. Following that, the banks got closed. So people were crowding like animals before ATM to withdraw money. So that is panic leading to herding. But that is like, I should not give that example because that is physical herding. The market also herds. And it has been studied by me, my student in the Bombay Stock Exchange, National Stock Exchange, at which point it herds, when did it herd, all that can be found out through economic analysis.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, sir. So I guess you are in a hurry. I can understand that. You have a RSC meeting.
Yes, I've got a pre-submission now, actually.
Pre-submission of one of your.
And the scholar is moving in and out to tell me that you quit the classroom. I
can understand his stress level. I can understand his stress level. Rather, we all can. Okay, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for accommodating us. It was nice to have you on this platform. Okay, participants. So officially, we have come to the end of this session. So you have got some extra leeway. So it is now just 10:30, and our second session is scheduled right at the time 11:45. So I appreciate your effort that you joined half an hour early. You followed whatever we asked you to do. So with these few words, I am closing this session. So we will open the next session 10 minutes before the scheduled time, that is at 11:35, so that you can come and join again. So you get an extended coffee break or a breakfast break. So please enjoy. Yeah, Rina ma'am, you have a query?
No, sir, I have already asked.
Okay. ठीक है. Thank you. So I am closing this session. Thank you, Kaustav. Yeah. So we will catch up again at 11:35. And the session will commence from 11:45 a.m. Please fill the feedback form. It has been shared in the chat box as well as in the WhatsApp group.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, welcome, Akshay. Any of the participants, if you have any query, because we have some time, if you have any query which we can address from our end, I would like to communicate to all the participants who are present over here that the attendance and attendance has to be uploaded at the AICTE Academy portal. So once that is done, because hundreds of FDPs go on simultaneously at a point of time across the country, which most of you know. So once the attendance is updated, and after that we will have the examination tomorrow. It will be a MCQ based short examination of 50 questions. So 50 MCQ questions will be given on an average 3 to 4 from every session. So that will make up the formal test which we will have to conduct as per Atal Academy guidelines. So we have 1 hour scheduled for that, but I'm sure that is more than sufficient. So after that, we will be having an interactive feedback session where I expect you all to just switch on your cameras and I switch on the video camera, that is, so that we can have a group photo, which is very important. Again, that has to be uploaded as well. So please be prepared tomorrow during the valedictory session. मुकेश कुमार वर्मा जी, आई कैन सी यू. सो कल हम लोगों का जो सेशन होगा उसमें प्लीज थोड़ा आप सब रेडी रहिए सो दैट वी कैन हैव द फोटो सेशन. ठीक है, वी विल हैव इट आफ्टर द एग्जामिनेशन एंड आई वांट अ इंटरैक्टिव फीडबैक सेशन फ्रॉम ऑल ऑफ यू.
Sir, I am having two queries. Good morning, sir.
गुड मॉर्निंग मैम.
I'm having the first question is that is the test link will be available only for 1 hour or scheduled time, or is it available for the entire day?
Ma'am, it will be available only during that hour.
Only during
Scheduled
that
time,
hour.
the scheduled time which is given in the time schedule, you have it, or
Ji,
else
ji.
we can share it again tomorrow morning. We will share it again in the WhatsApp group so that you
Okay.
get it
And
handy.
is there any negative marking?
Any?
Any negative marking in that test?
No, ma'am, no. This is not a selection as we do for our students.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
No,
so
ma'am,
much.
no, ma'am. This
Thank
is
you, sir.
this is enjoying while learning.
Yes,
Or
sir.
rather,
Yes,
what my
exactly.
intention was to learn by enjoying, to
Hmm.
get to know amongst us. And I wish to keep this WhatsApp group open. What is your opinion, or opinion of most of the participants? That once
Yes, sir.
this FDP gets-
Time to time, we can interact about any
Exactly.
other opportunities available. Yes.
Exactly. And even research interests, seminars,
Yes.
conferences, whatever are held.
Yes,
Exactly.
sir. Definitely.
Ma'am, can I know you are representing which institute?
Sir, I'm Dr. Jaya Nima from IBMR, Institute of Business Management and Research, IPS Academy, Indore, MP.
Indore. Okay, fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So any other queries which you have, dear participants? And one thing which I would like to clarify, that after uploading the marks, and obviously we have around 120, 130 participants. So it will take a day or two for us to upload all the marks after the evaluation. And after that, what I have experienced, and I'm sure many of you have also participated in Atal FDPs, the certificates which get system generated from AICTE Atal website does not happen all of a sudden. So I expect professionalism and maturity from all of you, because I can see matured faces or matured DPs. That much I can say. Okay. So any more queries from any of the participants? Okay, because I'm not finding any query right at this moment, so I am closing this meeting now. And I have, as I have already mentioned, that we have concluded early in session 1, so we get a 1 hour rest, a 1 hour 10 minutes rest, and then we will start at 11:45, and the meeting link will be active again from 11:35 a.m. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir.